I stood in the kitchen, staring out the window at the gray sky. The rain fell in a steady rhythm, mirroring the monotony of my life. I could hear the faint sound of the doorbell echoing through the house, pulling me from my thoughts. The delivery man was here. Another package. Another reminder of my routine. I sighed, my heart heavy with the weight of obligation. As I opened the door, I was hit by an unexpected rush of energy. There he stood, Ethan. He was tall, with tousled hair and a boyish grin that lit up his face. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Our eyes locked, and I felt an electric charge between us, something I had not felt in years. Why did this stranger make my heart race? "Hi, I have a delivery for you," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "Thank you," I managed to reply, my voice barely above a whisper. I took the package from him, our fingers brushing for just a second, but that brief touch sent a thrill through me. I could feel the weight of my life pressing down, yet here was this moment, this spark of something new. I closed the door, my heart pounding. What was wrong with me? I glanced at the clock on the wall. Mark would be home soon, and I had a dinner to prepare. I turned back to the kitchen, feeling a mix of guilt and exhilaration. My life with Mark had become a series of obligations, a checklist of what I had to do each day. I felt trapped, like I was living in a fog. As the rain continued to pour, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant for something more. I wanted to feel alive again. I wanted to escape the confines of my predictable existence. The silence in my home often felt deafening, filled with unspoken words and unmet desires. Wasn't there more to life than this? "Dinner will be ready soon," I called out to Mark when he finally came home, his presence filling the room with an air of heaviness. He barely looked up from his phone as he responded, "Okay." I could see the distance between us growing, like an invisible wall that pushed us further apart. I set the table, my mind drifting back to Ethan. What was it about him that captivated me? Was it his carefree demeanor? The way his smile made the world seem a little brighter? I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thoughts. I was a wife and a mother. I had responsibilities. Mark walked into the dining room, his face blank as he sat down. I tried to engage him in conversation, but the words felt forced. "How was your day?" I asked, hoping to bridge the gap. "Fine," he replied curtly, pushing his food around on his plate. The silence that followed was suffocating. I felt a knot in my stomach, a longing for connection that was slowly fading. As I sat there, I couldn't help but wonder if there was a way out of this suffocating routine. Was there a chance for me to reclaim my joy? I thought of Ethan again, and my heart raced at the thought of seeing him. What would it be like to break free, even just for a moment? The evening dragged on, filled with obligatory exchanges and empty glances. I felt like a ghost in my own life. As I cleaned up after dinner, the memory of Ethan lingered in my mind, a beacon of hope in my dull existence. I wanted to know him better, to explore the connection we shared, even if it was just a fleeting moment. What if I took a risk? What if I allowed myself to feel something real again? The excitement of the unknown tugged at my heart, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of possibility. But would I have the courage to pursue it? Would I dare to step into the light? The next morning started like any other. The sound of Mark's alarm clock buzzed through the quiet house, pulling me from a restless sleep. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the day ahead pressing down on me. Mark's side of the bed was already empty. He must have gotten up early again. I sighed, wishing I could find some spark to ignite my day. As I shuffled into the kitchen, I noticed the clock ticking ominously. It was later than I thought. I rushed to make coffee, my hands trembling slightly as I poured the water. Just then, I heard Mark's footsteps in the hallway. He walked in, his face already set in a frown. "I'm running late," he muttered, grabbing a piece of toast from the counter. His tone was clipped, and I could see he was focused on his phone, scrolling through messages without even looking at me. Do you want coffee? I asked, trying to break through the fog that hung between us. Sure, he replied distractedly. I prepared a cup and handed it to him, but he barely acknowledged my gesture. As I watched him rush out the door, I felt a familiar pang of loneliness. The door clicked shut behind him, and I was left alone in the silence once again. Just then, the doorbell rang, jolting me from my thoughts. My heart raced, a mix of excitement and nerves as I hurried to the door. I opened it, and there he was, Ethan, with that same boyish grin that had brightened my day before. "Morning," he said, his voice full of warmth. "I have a delivery for you." "Hi," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I could feel my cheeks flushing as I took the package from him. Our fingers brushed again, and the contact sent a thrill through me. "How's your day so far?" he asked, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Just the usual," I replied, forcing a smile. "Mark left for work, and now I'm just stuck in the routine," he finished for me, his eyes sparkling with understanding. I nodded, surprised at how easily he read my thoughts. "Exactly. It feels like every day is the same." "Well, maybe today could be different," he suggested, his smile widening. "You deserve a little excitement, don't you?" I felt a flutter in my chest. "I do," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, I was struck by a wave of vulnerability. I had never been one to take risks, but something about Ethan made me want to step outside my comfort zone. "What do you have in mind?" I asked, my heart racing at the thought of the possibilities. Ethan's expression turned serious for a moment. "How about we grab a coffee together? Just for a few minutes. I promise it'll be fun." I hesitated, glancing back at the empty house behind me. The thought of leaving my responsibilities, even for a moment, sent a rush of guilt through me. But the desire to break free was overwhelming. "Okay," I said, surprising myself with my own boldness. "Great. Just give me a moment to put this in my truck," he said, his excitement infectious. I took a deep breath, my heart racing with anticipation as I watched him walk away. As I closed the door, I felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. What was I doing? I was about to step out of my carefully constructed life into the unknown. A few minutes later, Ethan returned, and we walked together towards a small cafe down the street. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting a warm glow on the pavement. I couldn't help but smile as we chatted, discovering little things about each other. "So, what do you do when you're not delivering packages?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I'm a photographer," he replied, his face lighting up. "I love capturing moments. It's all about seeing the world differently, you know?" "That sounds amazing," I said, feeling a spark of inspiration. I used to love taking pictures, but I haven't picked up my camera in years. Ethan looked at me intently. "You should. There's beauty in everything, even in the mundane." As we talked, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in a long time. I was laughing, sharing stories, and for the first time in ages, I felt alive. But then, without thinking, I leaned in, and before I knew it, our lips met in a soft, stolen kiss. The world around us faded away, and in that moment, all my worries melted. But as I pulled back, a wave of guilt washed over me. What had I just done? I felt exhilarated yet terrified at the same time. I shouldn't have done that," I stammered, my heart racing. Ethan looked at me, his expression a mix of surprise and understanding. "It's okay, Alice. Sometimes, we need to feel something real." I knew then that this was just the beginning of something complicated, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was finally reclaiming a part of myself I thought was lost forever. The days dragged on after that kiss with Ethan, each one filled with a mix of joy and guilt. I felt like I was living two lives, and the weight of it pressed heavily on my chest. My mornings with Mark were filled with routine and obligation, while my thoughts drifted to Ethan, filling my heart with warmth and excitement. The contrast was dizzying. I often found myself staring out the window, lost in memories of happier times with Mark. We used to laugh more, share our dreams, and plan adventures together. I remembered our trip to the beach last summer, the sun setting as we walked hand in hand along the shore, the sound of waves crashing in the background. We should do this more often, I had said, my heart full. Yeah, we should, Mark had replied with a smile. But as time passed, those moments became fewer and farther between, replaced by responsibilities and unspoken words. One night, after Mark had fallen asleep, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to find comfort in the silence that filled our room. The quiet felt heavy, almost suffocating. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of Ethan. I couldn't shake the thrill of our kiss, the way it made me feel alive. But then, a wave of guilt crashed over me. How could I betray Mark like this? He deserved better. But did I deserve more? I finally got out of bed and wandered into the living room, hoping to find some clarity. The darkness enveloped me, and I flicked on a lamp, casting a warm glow over the room. I sat on the couch, my hands trembling as I thought about my life. "What do you want, Alice?" I whispered to myself, feeling lost. In that moment of solitude, I realized I was at a crossroads. My heart ached for the freedom and connection I felt with Ethan, yet my mind clung to the memories of the life I had built with Mark. Could I truly have both? Was it fair to keep leading Ethan on while I remained committed to Mark? Just then, my phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Ethan. "Hey, thinking about you. Want to talk?" My heart raced, the thrill of his words igniting a fire within me. I hesitated for a moment, my fingers hovering over the screen. Should I respond? Would it make things more complicated? I took a deep breath and typed back, "Sure. I'd love to." A moment later, my phone rang. Hearing his voice made my heart skip a beat. "Hey, Alice," he said, his tone warm and inviting. "I was hoping we could meet up again. I really enjoyed our last time together." "I did too," I admitted, biting my lip. "But I'm not sure how this can work. I have my family to think about." "I understand," Ethan replied, his voice soothing. "But I can't help but feel there's something special between us. You deserve to feel happy and free, Alice. You shouldn't have to hide." His words washed over me like a bomb, but they also stirred up my fears. "I know, but it's complicated. Mark doesn't deserve this. He's been there for me." "I get it," Ethan said gently. "But what about you? What do you want?" I paused, feeling the weight of his question. What did I want? The truth was, I wanted to feel alive again. I wanted to explore this spark with Ethan, but I was scared of the consequences. "I don't know," I finally admitted. "I feel so torn." "Maybe we can figure it out together," he suggested. "Just take it one step at a time. I'll be here for you, no matter what you decide." His reassurance felt like a lifeline, but it also made me realize how deep I was getting into this mess. I felt a mix of excitement and dread. "Okay," I said softly. "Let's meet tomorrow." As I hung up the phone, I felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with fear. The silence in my home felt louder than ever, and I knew I was inching closer to a decision that would change everything. Could I really step into this new world with Ethan, or would I end up losing everything I had with Mark? That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my heart racing with uncertainty. I was at a turning point, and the struggle within me was just beginning. Dinner that night was tense. The air hung thick with unsaid words and a growing sense of suspicion that I could feel radiating from Mark. He sat across the table, his eyes searching mine, trying to uncover the truth behind my distant behavior. I fidgeted with my fork, pushing the food around my plate. Each bite felt like a lie. "Are you okay, Alice?" Mark asked, his voice laced with concern. "You've been different lately." I looked up, meeting his gaze. "I'm fine." Just tired, I guess. But my voice felt weak, and I knew he could sense the unease in me. I don't buy it, he replied, his brow furrowing. You're not yourself. Is there something you want to talk about? I felt a pang of guilt. I wanted to tell him everything, the truth about Ethan, my feelings, my confusion. But the words clung to my throat like a stubborn knot. Instead, I managed a weak smile. Really, it's nothing. Just work stress. Mark nodded but didn't seem convinced. He pushed his plate away and leaned forward. Alice, I care about you. If something is wrong, I want to help. His sincerity tugged at my heart. I could see the love in his eyes, but it felt overshadowed by the secret I held. How could I share my truth without shattering this fragile moment? I appreciate that, Mark. I just need some time to sort things out in my head. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. I just wish you'd let me in. It feels like you're building a wall between us. The weight of his words hit me hard. I didn't want to build walls, I wanted to break free. But how could I explain the pull I felt toward Ethan? I could already see Mark's disappointment in his eyes if I ever revealed that part of me. Trying to shift the mood, I asked, "How was your day at work?" He shrugged, but I could see the frustration in his expression. Same old, same old. Just the usual meetings and deadlines. But I'd much rather hear about you. I felt trapped in a loop of obligatory conversation. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I glanced at the clock, each tick echoing my internal struggle. I'm really okay, I said, though I could hear the uncertainty in my voice. Just then, my phone buzzed on the table, breaking the tension. My heart raced as I saw Ethan's name flash across the screen. I hesitated, caught between the life I had and the life I craved. Mark glanced at my phone, and I quickly picked it up, trying to keep my hands steady. Who is it? He asked, his tone casual, but I could hear the edge of curiosity. I swallowed hard. Just a friend, I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. Mark raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, but he dropped the topic. I felt a mix of relief and guilt wash over me. The message was just as simple, "Can't wait to see you later." But to me, it felt like a lifeline. As dinner wrapped up, I offered to clear the table, needing a moment to breathe. I rinsed the dishes under the warm water, my mind racing. I thought about Ethan, the thrill of our last meeting, and the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel seen. When I returned to the dining room, I found Mark sitting with his head in his hands. Alice, he said, sounding defeated. I just want to know what's going on. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. I took a deep breath, feeling the pressure mount. I promise I'll talk to you soon. I need to figure some things out first. He nodded slowly, disappointment clouding his eyes. I just want you to be happy, whatever that means for you. His words struck a chord in me. I felt the weight of my choices and the reality of my situation. I was forcing him to carry the burden of my secrets. I'm trying, Mark. I am, I said softly, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. As he stood to leave the room, I made a decision. I would meet Ethan again. I would explore this side of myself, even if it meant risking everything with Mark. I needed to understand what I wanted, regardless of the fear that came with it. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my heart racing with anticipation and dread. I was ready to confront my truth, to embrace the journey ahead, no matter where it led me. The confrontation was coming, and I could feel it in my bones. I was stepping into the unknown, but for the first time in a long while, I felt alive. As the days passed, my meetings with Ethan became more frequent. Each encounter was filled with passion, yet the thrill was often overshadowed by a heavy cloak of guilt. I found myself lost in a world of excitement when I was with him, but the moment I returned home, the weight of my deception pressed down on me like a stone. I could feel it affecting my relationship with my children. I was short with them, distracted, and lost in my thoughts, and I hated myself for it. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Ethan. "Can't wait to see you tonight." My heart raced, but along with the excitement came a wave of fear. What if Mark found out? What if my children noticed I was different? The thought of lying to them twisted my stomach in knots. Just as I was lost in these thoughts, I heard the front door open. Mark's voice filled the house. "Alice, I'm home." I quickly shoved my phone into my pocket, panic rising within me. "Hey, just finishing up some chores," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. I knew he could sense the tension in the air, but I did my best to hide it. He walked into the living room, looking tired but still managing a smile. "How was your day?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I could feel the weight of my secret pressing down on my shoulders. "It was fine." "Just the usual stuff," I said too quickly. I avoided his gaze, focusing instead on the laundry basket. Mark stepped closer, his brow furrowing. "You seem distant again. Are you sure everything is okay?" There it was again, that familiar sense of dread. He was too perceptive for his own good. "I'm fine, really," I insisted, forcing a smile. But inside, I felt like I was lying through my teeth. Just as I was about to change the topic, my phone buzzed again, this time more insistently. I glanced down and saw Ethan's name flash across the screen. My heart dropped. I quickly silenced my phone, but the damage was done. Mark had seen it. "Who is it?" he asked, his tone casual but laced with concern. "It's just a friend," I said, trying to sound nonchalant, but my voice betrayed me. Mark's expression shifted. "A friend? You've been saying that a lot lately." His eyes narrowed slightly, suspicion creeping in. I felt cornered. "Mark, please." "It's nothing," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to escalate things, but I could feel the tension rising like steam from a kettle. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Alice, I'm worried about you. I can't help it. You're not yourself, and I want to know why." I wanted to scream that I was falling for another man, but I had stolen moments of passion and joy that I had long forgotten. But all I could manage was a shaky breath. "I just have a lot on my mind. I promise I'll talk to you soon." Mark nodded, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. "I just want to help you. I don't want us to drift apart." His words pierced my heart. I didn't want to drift away from him either, but I felt like I was already doing so. I felt trapped in a web of my own making. As the evening wore on, I tried to push aside my guilt. We sat together on the couch, watching a show, but I could hardly concentrate. My mind was racing with thoughts of Ethan and what awaited me later. I felt like I was living in two different worlds, and the pressure was becoming unbearable. Then, without warning, the doorbell rang. I jumped, my heart racing. I shot a nervous glance at Mark. "I'll get it," I said, hoping it was just a package or a neighbor. I opened the door, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Ethan, standing there with that familiar smile that made my heart flutter. But behind me, I heard Mark's voice, calling from the living room. "Who is it, Alice?" Panic surged through me. "Just a delivery," I shouted back, my eyes wide with fear. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "What are you doing here?" I whispered urgently, glancing back at the door. "I had to see you," Ethan replied, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I couldn't wait any longer. But I knew the danger of this moment. "Ethan, this isn't safe. Mark is right inside." My heart raced as I felt the walls closing in. "I know, but I miss you," he said, stepping closer. "Let's just have a moment." I felt the pull between us, the gravity of my desire colliding with the reality of my life. "I can't do this," I whispered, glancing back at the door again. But as I stood there, Torn between two worlds, I realized I was at a breaking point. I had to make a choice. I could either confess everything to Mark or continue living this lie. But in that moment, with Ethan so close, I felt alive for the first time in years. The door creaked open behind me, and Mark stepped out, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. "Alice, what is going on?" I felt my heart drop. The confrontation had come, and with it, all my secrets were laid bare. I stood there, frozen, knowing that my life was about to change forever. In the days that followed the confrontation, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. My heart felt heavy with the weight of my choices. I knew I had to confront my reality, to face the truth about who I was and what I wanted. I felt lost, like a ship adrift at sea, searching for land but finding only waves of confusion and regret. Sitting in our living room one evening, I could hear Mark moving around in the kitchen. He was trying to keep things normal, but the silence between us was deafening. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. I needed to talk to him, to share the truth that had been lodged in my throat like a stone. "Mark," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. "Can we talk?" He appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel, his expression cautious. "Sure, Alice. What's on your mind?" I felt my heart race at the weight of the moment. I have been struggling," I admitted, my voice soft. "With everything. With us." His eyes searched mine, a mixture of concern and hope flickering across his face. "I've sensed that. You've seemed distant for a while now." He stepped closer, his shoulders tense. "What is it? Please, just tell me." I swallowed hard. "It's hard for me to explain. I feel like I've lost myself in this marriage. I've been trying to be the perfect wife and mother, but I've been unhappy." Mark's brow furrowed, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. "Unhappy?" I had no idea. "Why didn't you say something before?" "I didn't know how," I admitted, tears welling up. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it was just a phase, but it's more than that. I've been seeing someone else." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Mark's face went pale, and he took a step back. "Someone else?" "Alice, who?" "It's Ethan," I confessed, my heart racing. "He's the delivery man." I didn't mean for it to happen, but I got caught up in the excitement. It made me feel alive again. His expression shifted from shock to anger, and I felt a pang of guilt stab at my heart. "You've been seeing him while we've been trying to build a life together?" "I know it's wrong," I said quickly, my voice breaking. But I had lost sight of who I was. I felt trapped, and he made me feel free. Mark ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "You think that's an excuse? You think running away with someone else is going to fix your problems?" "No, I don't," I replied, tears streaming down my cheeks. But it opened my eyes to what I was missing. I need to find myself again. Mark stood there, his jaw clenched. "And what does that mean for us? Do you want to end our marriage?" "I don't want to end it, but I can't pretend everything is okay. I don't want to keep living a lie," I said, my voice steadying. "I need time to figure things out. I need to rebuild trust, not just with you, but with myself." He sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I don't know how we can move forward from this, Alice. It feels like everything has changed." "I know it does," I whispered, stepping closer. "But I want to try. I want to be honest with you. I want us to talk about our feelings, even when it's hard." Mark's gaze softened, and I could see the hurt still lingering in his eyes. "It's going to take time, Alice. Trust doesn't come back overnight." "I understand," I said, my heart aching for the man I had once loved fiercely. "But I'm willing to work on it. I want to rebuild what we had, if you'll let me." He nodded slowly, the tension in his body easing just a bit. "Okay. Let's take it one step at a time. We can start by being honest with each other. As we stood there, a fragile truce forming between us, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges. But for the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of silence beginning to lift. I was ready to reclaim my identity, not just as a mother or a wife, but as Alice. In that moment, I realized that the path to self-discovery would be long and winding, but it was a journey I needed to take. I had to learn to accept my past while forging a new future, one where I could truly be me. Share this story if you believe that honesty and communication can mend even the deepest wounds in a relationship. Leave a comment about a moment when you had to confront a difficult truth in your life, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories like this one.